again.
We're good. Let's go.
Welcome, everyone, to the subcommittee meeting. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Vicki Urbanik, Porter County Auditor, and I am not going to be chairing this subcommittee meeting, but we're going to begin with the roll call of the members present. And let me just go down the list here. Commissioner Biggs.
Here.
Councilmember Brickner.
Here.
Councilmember Wagner.
Here.
And citizen appointments, Ruth Vance.
Here.
And Rebecca Tomlin.
Here.
Okay, we have all five present. This committee meeting is the first subcommittee meeting of this particular subcommittee, the nonprofits and employers. And this is largely going to be an organizational discussion tonight. And the first order of business is to select a chair of the subcommittee. And at that point, whoever is elected chair will take over the meeting. So, can I have a motion for chair of the subcommittee?
I move that we appoint Jim Biggs.
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Ruth Vance, seconded by Mike Brickner. Are there any other nominations? Okay, nominations are closed. All those in favor of Jim Biggs, Commissioner Jim Biggs, being chair of the Nonprofit and Employer Subcommittee signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? Okay, it is unanimous. Commissioner Biggs, you can take it over.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Ruth. As we dealt with in our last subcommittee meeting, nonprofits, we thought it would be wise to assign a vice chair to this board as well, just in the event that I fall off the face of the earth or can't be found. So I will entertain a motion for a vice chair. I motion for Mike Brickner as vice chair. Do you have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ruth here. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. I know you probably weren't asking for that, Mike, but
You know what?
you got to go with the whiskers.
It's a win-win.
That's right. It's a
We're good.
To item 3, review of guidance from steering committee. And I believe that I turned that over to Vicki.
Yes. Okay. On March 10th, the steering committee met for the first time and discussed a variety of organizational matters. And we just wanted to go over some of the guidance that the steering committee is giving to all of its subcommittees. And so I did give you an excerpt from what's going to be the minutes when they meet next, and they'll be approving the first meeting's minutes. But one of the discussion topics was the timetable. How are we going to be proceeding with all of these subcommittee meetings? And the steering committee would like to stick with the timetable that was established by the county commissioners, which is in April and May, the subcommittees would be meeting. You will be reviewing the proposals that have been received and hearing presentations from the applicants, and then you will be making your recommendations to the steering committee. Then the steering committee, staff members will compile all of those recommendations in the month of June, and then in the month of July, the steering committee will meet to review those recommendations and then forward a final plan to the county commissioners. And the hope is that the county commissioners We'll be adopting that plan in August, and the county council will approve the appropriations also in August. And the benefit to this timetable is, well, one benefit is that most of these decisions will be made before the annual county budget process gets underway. For those of you who don't know, the county budget process is a very involved experience dealing with much more money than what the ARPA monies total. I'm not negating the impact of the ARPA monies, but the county budget hearings take a long time and a lot of consideration. And so if there's maybe any other funding issues that need to be addressed, it could be addressed at the county budget time. And there's also a feeling that there needs to be action on some of these proposals because some of them may take a very long time to get underway. Once contracts are let, once consultants are hired or architects or whatever the case may be, the county must obligate all of its ARPA funds by the end of 2024. And obligate means that there has to be a contract in place or an invoice, something that legally binds you to spending that money by the end of 2024. So any projects that are going to be undertaken by outside entities, we need to know whether those funds can be committed well before the end of 2024, because if there's any money, in a sense, left on the table, then it goes back to U.S. Treasury. So that's one thought with the timetable. Other topics that the steering committee discussed was public comment. They'd like all subcommittees to sort of operate along the same, more or less the same structure, and to allow public comment at every meeting, at the end of each meeting. And the hope is that public comment would be limited. They talked about 3 minutes each, of course, exactly the timetable. It's up to the subcommittee. Individuals should come to the microphone. We'd like all individuals to use the same microphone. If you're not able to come up, we have a rotating microphone. Well, we'll find it that we can bring to you. And to state your name and your general place of residence for the record, so that we have a valid record of all of these proceedings. The steering committee would like all subcommittees to rank your proposals. So how you're going to rank that is going to be up to you. They would like to have the proposals ranked so that when you present your recommendations to the steering committee, they'll know where these proposals, what kind of preference you gave each of the proposals. And also, one of the issues that they would like the subcommittees to ask is to ask of each applicant, would you be willing to accept less than what you requested? Now, that's mainly because some projects might be do or die. They can't do this project without that amount of money. So that's something that would just be good to know. It's also pretty good to know because if you know how much of the requests came in, there's going to have to be some serious reductions. The total amount of requests that came in, there were 64 different applications, and they totaled just over $53 million. When you add the amount of the projects that have already been committed, it comes to $57 million. So we're about $24 million over what the feds are giving us. So your work is cut out for you. Yes?
Just to this committee or to the other committees? Total was the 50, right?
Total.
Okay, I didn't know that was just to.
No, total.
Thank you, sorry.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, so also, the steering committee, we're going to be working on a project checklist. It's going to be like a form that each subcommittee is going to be giving to the steering committee, and that's going to be worked on with the steering committee. we're not there yet. You haven't even begun your work yet, so we'll get there. And then the other issue that the steering committee adopted was what's called general priority considerations. And this is also on your handouts, also posted online, where the steering committee is saying that these are the items that are going to receive priority consideration from their standpoint. Many of these items are pretty clear-cut. For example, they should be in compliance with the federal law. They're one-time requests. To the extent possible, can the applicants leverage matching funds? The proposals should serve a large number of people in Porter County and the target population served. And that the requests are from agencies or organizations that are located in Porter County or primarily having operations in Porter County. And I also mentioned the need to obligate all of the proposals by the end of 2024. Other considerations that may affect funding deals with whether the applicants are in compliance with all existing rules and regulations, and the extent to which that they have received other funding through COVID-19 or other federal grants or other requests from other applicants. So that pretty much sums up the general considerations that the steering committee discussed. Now, this in no way, shape, or form means that subcommittees can't impose their own set of parameters or their own criteria. Maybe when you come up with ranking your projects, you might want to consider various ranking criteria that the steering committee hasn't addressed. So really, it's up to you how you want to proceed, but these are just some general organizational matters that the steering committee discussed and adopted. So, any questions on that?
Well, as we touched on in the last committee meeting, not this committee, another committee meeting, is that what's going to be really important for our board to have before we start considering applications is agreeing on some type of scoring system, so we can make everything uniform and fair. And that's not going to be an easy task. So between now and the next meeting, we'll share contact information and then throw out your ideas of how we should score, each applicant, or as we move forward to each applicant. Because, right now, we do not have that, and I don't know how we can consider any application without that. So, go ahead, Vicki, I'm sorry.
Is there any other model out that we know of, Jim, in the state where
No.
anybody's doing anything?
As a matter of fact, I'm not blowing county government's horn here, but my travels throughout the state, I have not found any municipality that has received these funds and about ready to process these funds that has gone to the lengths that we have to make sure that we're satisfying the U.S. Treasury's guidelines and regulations. So, no, we're kind of trailblazers here, and that's okay. It's just there is going to be a lot of work here, a lot of work if it's done the right way, if it's done fairly. And the commissioners and the county council are going to have even more work to do because, as Vicki has pointed out, we've got $33 million and $54 million worth of requests. I'm sure that every one of them have their own, level of credibility and need. So it's going to be a challenge to sit here and determine, when you have an applicant saying, I need $500,000, and you end up saying, well, we can't do that, but we'll give you $100,000 because we know at the end of the bus ride that all this has got to be added up. So we're going to have to run a tally as we go forward. It's going to be interesting how the commissioners decide on what is move forward to the county council, because it's very likely, unless we do things with a lot of communication, or I should say, it's not likely that we're going to have all these committees submit their recommendations, that it's going to come up to $33 million. So, but anyway, review of the U.S. Treasury's final rule as it applies to the nonprofit employers subcommittee.
And I'm going to stand for this one. Okay, I have a slide presentation for you, and we're going to walk through this. What we're going to talk about right now is the rules that you're going to have to follow that is unique to this subcommittee. For reasons that I hope will become very clear pretty soon, this subcommittee, nonprofit and small businesses or employers, really is different from the other three subcommittees that we have. You're going to be focused on something different than the other subcommittees, and I'll go into that in a little bit. Okay, now some of you, I know, have seen this slide many times. These are the four main expenditure categories that are outlined in the final rule. The final rule was released by U.S. Treasury on January 6th of this year. And it is our guidebook. It spells out all the rationales, all the parameters, all the restrictions, and all the different considerations that go into deciding how to spend your SLFRF allocations. This is my copy of the final rule with some other Treasury documents. So there's a lot to read here. I mentioned SLFRF. I know most of us talk about ARPA. SLFRF is the part of the American Rescue Plan Act that we are dealing with. It stands for State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. And that's what is the program that shared millions and millions of dollars with recipient governments throughout the country, including Porter County government. So these are the four expenditure categories that are allowed in the final rule. And I want to make something clear in case it hasn't been clear in all of these meetings. There is not one expenditure category that takes priority over another. Recipient governments like county government can choose to spend all of its SLFRF allocation in, let's say, broadband infrastructure. Now, people may not like that, but that would be their opinion. There would be nothing to prevent you from spending the entire amount in broadband infrastructure as long as you follow the rules that are in place. On the other hand, a recipient government can choose to give its entire allocation in the form of grants to nonprofits and small businesses. That may not please many people either, but there would be nothing to preclude a recipient government from doing that. My point here is that these are various options for using the money, and there's no one priority expenditure category. What we're seeing in a lot of other recipients, governments, is that they have approved premium pay and they have given some grants out, but the rest is in what I call the flexible use category called revenue loss, which can be used for any general government service. So I just want to emphasize that these are options. The final rule gives a lot of flexibility, but at the same time, there's lots of restrictions. There's lots to think about. So your subcommittee is going to be focused on a part of the second expenditure category called public health and negative economic impacts. Now, on this next slide, there are 8 subcategories to this expenditure category. The ones that you are going to be exclusively focused on are those last 3: assistance to nonprofits, assistance to small businesses, and assistance to impacted industries, including tourism. The other subcommittees are going to be dealing with other parts of the final rule. And some subcommittees may be dealing with the same part, but you will be dealing with just these 3 parts. Now, what does the final rule say about assistance to nonprofits and assistance to small businesses? And I'm going to focus on those two, nonprofits and small businesses. In your handout, I've given you an excerpt from what's called the overview of the final rule. This is a summary of the final rule. It's about a 44-page document, and I only printed out the pages that are relevant to your subcommittee. So, when it comes to identifying assistance to small businesses and nonprofits, you have to do a two-step process, essentially. Step one, you have to identify that there was a negative economic impact. In other words, the nonprofits and the small businesses that are seeking assistance from your subcommittee will have to demonstrate that they had a negative economic impact that was caused or exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. And then step two is that you design a response that addresses that impact. And I also highlighted that the responses must be related and reasonably proportional to the harm that was experienced. Now, I'm going to stop there and make a comment here about why your committee is different from the other ones. The other ones are looking at projects. They're looking at a variety of different enumerated uses that are allowed in the final rule that county government may want to pursue. County government may pursue it in one of two ways. County government may undertake this project on their own. Or county government may essentially contract with an outside entity to carry out the project on their behalf. This outside entity, in most cases, are probably going to be nonprofit groups. So in that case, the nonprofit is going to be a sub-recipient. They're going to be receiving what we call a sub-award. It's going to be our project. It's just that the nonprofit is going to carry out that project on our behalf. So I'm kind of going to mention a few examples here. Let's say that we have a project that addresses homelessness. The county might say, we want to pursue that, and we want ABC, nonprofit, to carry that out on our behalf. That's different from you. Your subcommittee is looking at direct cash assistance to nonprofits and small businesses that proved that they suffered an economic harm. It's a different focus and it's a different mentality. Okay, now how do you measure negative economic impacts? If you go to your overview of the final rule, you'll see that Treasury gives us some guidance on how can we measure negative economic impacts. It's also called economic harm. You can look at decreased revenue. You can look at increased costs. Those are pretty measurable, all right? We could look at tax returns. We could look at financial statements, and we could see it. But then there's these broader issues, financial insecurity, capacity to weather financial hardship and challenges. Those might not be that measurable. So I think one of the first things that you're going to have to do, either individually or as a group, is to identify how are you going to measure economic harm? What are the parameters that you're going to be looking at? Then, what is an allowable response? Remember step 2. You have to have a response that addresses that negative economic harm or impact. Now, here's another area where your subcommittee, in my opinion, is different than the other subcommittees. Because in the final rule, Treasury gives us lots and lots and lots of enumerated uses. They actually spell out all sorts of different programs. For your subcommittee, assistance to nonprofits and small businesses, the enumerated uses, the first part is in the overview of the final rule. Enumerated uses, loans or grants to mitigate financial hardship, or technical or in-kind assistance or other services. There's not like, you can spend it on PPE, you can spend it on childcare, you can spend it on homelessness, you can spend it on mortgage assistance. It's not like that. It's your grant or your loan to the nonprofit is to help them mitigate the financial hardship that was caused by COVID-19. And then there's an excerpt from the final rule that says the uses should be based on their responsiveness to their beneficiary and their ability to address the impact or harm caused by or experienced by that beneficiary. It's pretty broad.
I have a question. If the county has to have these monies encumbered with signed contracts by a certain date, in other words, spent,
Right.
how are we able to give loans that are expected to be paid back?
Right.
And then what do we do with that money once it's paid back?
Well, that's a very good question. There would have to be a contract in place between us and the nonprofit or the business spelling out those terms. Now,
Well,
in this case, the loan would be paid back to the pot of money that we would have to use for other purposes or return it to Treasury.
And the deadline for that would be,
It's still the 2024.
what I thought.
that's what,
Obligated.
if we could get some clarification on that, because if we go into say a 5-year term on a loan to be paid back, we're past that date now, to where that money has to be spent or returned. So as
Right.
that money comes back to us, what do we do with it? Does it go back to the U.S. Treasury's office? Or what?
I would think so. We would, if it comes back to us, the county then could use that money for another purpose. But it would still have to obligate that money by 2024 for the other purpose, which kind of speeds up that timetable a little bit more.
Well, I mean,
If you're
the
looking
term,
for
the term on the loan would have to be very short
Yeah, exactly.
in order to meet that 24.
Exactly. Now, I don't have any quantifiable statistics on this, but based on what I'm seeing in other counties and other entities, mostly they're giving grants, direct cash assistance. They're not going into loans. But we can research the loans further on that. And then, so the key takeaways facing your subcommittee is that your focus is on negative economic impacts that were caused or exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, and that you're looking at direct cash assistance through grants or loans if you want to go that route. Assistance should be related and reasonably proportional to the economic harm experienced. And then there are some other provisions that the nonprofits must be a 501c3 or a 501c19 tax exempt organization, and businesses must meet the definition of small businesses, which generally is you have fewer than 500 employees, and I think there's a provision dealing with being independently owned. You're not like a major chain, okay? So there's a lot for you to consider going through these applications, and how you're going to measure economic harm and how you're going to measure what they're proposing to do with that money. Does it respond to that economic harm or loss? There are different proposals that address this issue differently. I don't want to highlight any one group over another, but I will say that some of the applicants that are going to be coming to your subcommittee spelled out how much money they lost and how much they are asking to try to help keep them in operation. And that is clearly one of the other ways that you can address this. Others talk about the challenges that they faced during COVID-19, the problems that they experienced. And they're proposing a whole different project. They're proposing something that they want to do at their either, let's just say, facility. And so your job will be to evaluate how that proposal responds to that economic impact. Like I said, it's a different focus than on the other subcommittees where they're going to be focusing on actual projects that the county wants to pursue with their SLFRF allocation.
But Vicki, if we're considering requests that have to do with say, making some kind of enhancement to their facility. So we're going to consider bricks and mortar type thing. Okay, all right.
Now, I would agree with you, Commissioner Biggs, that most other counties are not going through this process. However, there is one that I am aware of that did form a committee, and they are meeting publicly, and they started last summer. It's Hamilton County, and they're located just north of Indianapolis, home to Carmel, Fishers, Noblesville. I shared with you the meeting that I could find where they addressed what you're addressing, assistance to nonprofits and small businesses. And I printed out the meeting minutes for you. And when you have time and want to review how they approach this question,
Yes,
it's
could
in the
we-
meeting minutes.
Could I get a copy for each member of the board, that, and also a copy of your visual here,
Yes.
your slides here?
Sure,
To
certainly.
each member of the board to
Okay.
study.
I did hand this out.
Okay. Oh, this is part of what you handed
Yes,
out?
and it's online. It's, this one was from December 14th.
Oh, I see it.
Now, they have other meetings online, and I saw that they were talking about assistance to small businesses. They broke it up between nonprofits and small businesses. They had this one section all about, I think it was like stormwater-related projects, but I was just looking for your project, your mission here. This is not to say that Hamilton County's doing it right or that they're doing it wrong. Again, U.S. Treasury gives us the flexibility to design this program the way we feel is best for us, as long as we stay within all of the rules, obviously. Okay, so in terms of the PowerPoint, when there's an actual real PowerPoint, I do try to put that online, and I will get you copies of that.
Okay, perfect.
Now, the one that was at the, I think either the behavioral health one, that wasn't like a real PowerPoint. I just showed a few slides, and so
Okay.
that's just, yeah. But the PowerPoints are all online, and this one will be as well. But I will get copies for you.
Thank you.
So that is the basic nutshell of what the final rule says about your committee and or your subcommittee and the issues that you're going to have to address. And one last thing, I know everyone here is looking at, they're interested in the proposals. What I'm doing is I'm going through all of the proposals to make sure that they're assigned to the best subcommittee, in keeping with how the county commissioners set up these subcommittees. I'll tell you that there are some proposals that could easily go into different subcommittees. And so we're just trying to look at what makes the most sense, what's the fairest, and it's not really fair, it's not an issue of fairness, what makes the most sense with how the commissioners wanted to structure these subcommittees. But clearly you are dealing with assistance to nonprofits and small businesses in the form of these direct grants or loans. And that is your focus and your mission, and you will probably have one of the most active subcommittees that there is.
Figures.
So do you have a number that you're saying of proposals that we're probably going to get?
28.
I'm sorry?
Sounds good to me.
It's about 28.
28.
Yes. There are some, though, that probably should move to a different subcommittee. So
Well, who will determine that?
I'm going through them,
Okay.
and I'd like to consult with my other colleague, the technical advisor, the county attorney. And I'll share my rationale, and we'll go from that. For the most part, all of the proposals that were submitted to this particular subcommittee will probably stay with this subcommittee, but there are a few that probably should go into a different subcommittee. For example, and I don't really want to highlight anyone, one applicant is not a nonprofit or a small business, so we need to find a better home for that one. And I'll just leave it at that.
All right. Okay. I have a question. You said that how the committee wanted to score and how the committee wanted to assess the applications is pretty much left up to that particular committee. Could this committee say, look, we're not going to consider loans. We'll consider grants, but not loans?
Yes, you definitely
That could be left
can.
up to us?
You definitely can.
I mean, my issue with that is I think that we open up a huge can of worms if we start giving out loans. That have to be, I mean, what do you do when somebody quits paying? Yeah, defaults, I mean.
My goal is not to share my personal opinions, but I will share with you, thank you, Commissioner Biggs, because I wholeheartedly agree, because I just see problems
Yeah,
with loans.
I do too.
But it is allowable under the final rule. And some communities might find that that makes more sense for them. But you can certainly say, no, we're going to just do grants. And I think that that's how most other entities who are providing this assistance to nonprofits, it is a grant that they're giving them. It's direct cash assistance.
Is the state or federal government or any other kind of professional entity giving, or maybe has already given, some sort of seminar on how to do this? Have you gone to any of them?
Oh, yes, I have.
Okay.
We haven't gone into the detail of this because every recipient government might design their program differently.
Yeah, and that's, Ruth, that's my understanding too. Unfortunately, there's no blueprint that is laid out. Okay, here's the protocols that you must go through to get to the end point.
Right.
And so that's what's going to make this somewhat difficult, at least in the beginning, is making sure that our scoring system is solid, is consistent, and we don't vary from it at all. And how these other committees want to do it. I sit on another committee. Mike does, and so does Mr. Wagner. No, you don't sit on.
That's my only one.
Is that we feel the same way. We don't have a system right now. We don't have a scoring formula, and that's going to be. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I mean it's going to take some work on our part to come up with something that makes sense. So, but that's why you were chosen to be here. So,
I envision a spreadsheet.
We have spreadsheets. And we have spreadsheets. This is different than mine.
well, this is so
But
and I hope the
similar.
public understands that this is so different. And just like the pandemic, there's no blueprint how to deal with a pandemic. We all learned as we went on and dealt with this thing, and this is no different. I mean, there's nothing that a county commissioner does or a county councilman does that even remotely comes to the type of responsibility here, in that we're going to give money away. We're not in the business of doing that. We collect money and then deliver services. That's what we do up here. So this is all so new to us, and we just want to be extremely careful to make sure that we do it right. And if that means we got to have an extra meeting or two to do it, that's just what it means. Because all of our names are going to go on to this forever. So if you have any questions about that or any, you're apprehensive about, seeing the work in front of you about giving that kind of time, we should know that. I need to know that after the meeting. So.
I do agree with you where you say we have to get those point-based systems. That's the foundation. Without that, it's going to look like it's opinion-based.
Yeah, we can't get past A.
Yeah.
So we have our work cut out for us before that next meeting. I'm not suggesting that we have it down before our next meeting. What I'm suggesting is come to the next meeting with some good ideas so we can start throwing this stuff together. So we're going to have to item 5 on the agenda, we need to set a meeting date for our next meeting. Any suggestions, Vicki?
Okay, well, the calendar's already starting.
Are we kind of going a week out, looks like, from,
What's that?
are we kind of going a week out, like, the next,
Yeah.
girl meeting is the
Yeah,
following
we-
Thursday?
Yeah, week out.
You want to try and do it next
What is next Thursday?
Monday?
Monday works.
This is 7th?
No, that's for the,
Yeah, The behavioral health and social services is the 7th, Thursday.
and the first one was the
About the 11th,
31st.
that's next
So
Monday.
a week from today would be the 11th.
So we do want to do this one a week out as well? Do we want to keep going a
If
week out?
that's your prerogative.
Mondays work best for me.
Mondays?
Agreed.
It's fine.
Okay, so it almost sounds like you're claiming stake to Mondays, and behavioral health and social services might be staking out Thursdays, maybe?
Yeah, we'll certainly try to do that.
Okay. And the other two get the remaining time.
So you're talking about Monday, the 11th, the next meting?
Uh,
Does that work?
What's?
Well, Stormwater Advisory, but we canceled the Stormwater Management Board for the 12th, so I'd have to double check with them in the morning to see. Generally, I'm not having a problem telling people, sorry, you're gonna have to change your arrangements, but I'll check with Stormwater Advisory. And unless you hear from us, you can plan on it.
5
Okay.
o'clock then?
Well, just, I don't like to be caught off guard. If hypothetically, they're back on schedule and it conflicts with our date, where can we have this meeting?
Well, the 102A is out because it's locked out now for early voting until the first week of May. So really, it's a matter of me rearranging with people because I've been told that these are priority meetings, and if there's something there that's not an official, important meeting, I'm asking them to reschedule, kind of thing. So I will contact Novotny first thing tomorrow morning and be sure, but like I said, there was supposed to be a commissioners meeting on Tuesday the 12th, but you've rescheduled that, and usually the stormwater meeting gets rescheduled, so the advisory board meeting might not be meeting that night.
Okay.
So I'll just have to verify that in the morning.
The meeting room there at the sheriff's department, which is sizable, is there a possibility they could have it there?
The only problem with that, Jim, is we don't have the recording abilities. And we promised that all of these meetings would be recorded in the video.
I don't mean for us, I mean for them.
Oh, for them?
Yeah.
I'm sure that we can work something out with them.
All right.
You know, if nothing else, because that's just an advisory, it's not the official Stormwater Management Board meeting.
I trust you'll come up with something.
I'll make it work.
All right. Okay.
And you said these are priority meetings?
That's what I've been told.
That's told by your bosses?
That's what I've been told.
You're giving away $33 million. I don't know what else we got more important than that right now.
Unfortunately, I pushed the park board out to the silo at Sunset Hill tonight, so for this meeting, so I can move Stormwater Advisory.
I just don't want to see anything delayed. I mean,
That's a good meeting.
I'm sure everybody would agree that the sooner we get this and get this buttoned up, the better off everybody's going to be. The longer you hang something like this out, the more problems that are created. We come to the portion where we ask if there's any public comment, if anybody would like to speak. If you would like to speak, just walk up to the microphone there. Anybody like to speak? Anybody at all? The firemen look bewildered. Would you like to speak, guys?
Not today.
Okay.
Commissioner,
Yes.
do we want to schedule out more than one meeting here?
The board? Seems like we would.
All right, let me look and see where we're at. On the 18th,
Ooh, tax day.
we're wide open if you want to do the 18th at 5 PM as well.
That's the day after Easter. Is there, anybody got anything planned? They're gonna be out of town or anything?
Works.
It's good. 18th's fine with me.
I'll lock out those 2 dates and times. If it changes, I can always, take it down. So
Okay.
that's not a problem.
5 PM. And you want to try to set it on the 25th?
God. Right now, it's open, so grab it while it's open.
Yeah, grab it right now. Okay, and we'll
Commissioner-
know by the second or the third meeting whether or not what we need to schedule out from there, so.
Right.
Okay, yeah, after that, it should ease up a little bit because early voting will be over, and we'll be able to reclaim
True,
the space down
that's
there in
true.
May.
Does anybody in the board have any questions, any additional questions they'd like to ask Vicki?
Not at this time.
I just have one other comment, though. One other thing that you all might want to consider, and I think we talked about this at the other subcommittee, think about how you want to hear the presentations. I'm assuming everyone would be invited to bring their own PowerPoint, but how do you want to hear it from, in your case, the biggest requests down to the smallest, go in alphabetical order, or just go down the list and see, the first 4 or 5 that can make that meeting. Also, you have different groupings. You have small businesses and you also have nonprofits. The vast majority are nonprofits. I'll just tell you that right now. You also have 2 that could be considered tourism related, because you'll also be dealing with impacted industries, including tourism. And so, but the vast majority will be nonprofits. So would you want to group type projects in the same now? You don't have to make the decision now. It's just something to think about.
That actually does, now I have a question since you said that. So are we only going to be entertaining existing proposals instead of, like, for example, when Valparaiso did the Vibrant Communities grant, they did that and then accepted some after the grant was advertised. So do you know what I mean?
I believe the recommendation from the steering committee is that these are the proposals.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to
No
be
late
clear on.
proposals will be accepted.
Excellent, that's what I wanted to
At
make
least
sure
from,
100%.
the external.
Yeah, the only way I could see something like that happening is if, when we start going, all the committees start going through these applications and we end up throwing 90 of them out the door because they don't satisfy, the rule. And then the entire request for monies comes to, $8 million or something far less than 33, we may have to open it up at that time, but
That's also a possibility.
that's how I understand it, it's closed, so.
I just wanted to be clear on that, so everyone knows.
So I have a question. Would you supply us with, I think you said it was a 44-page overview of the law? Do you think that we need that whole overview, or do you think that everything, the pages you copied out of it are all we need?
For this subcommittee, those are the relevant pages. Now, you're more than free to read the rest of it to get a broader understanding of
I
it.
read it.
It's all online, right?
Yes, the overview is all online. It's on the county website. It's, I think it's on the auditor's page. It's also on U.S. Treasury page.
We have the short version under our ARP section as well.
Yes, you have the overview,
Yeah.
yes.
Board member Vance, Ruth, we're kind of blessed because she's an attorney. And she
Oh,
taught-
that could be a
she-
curse.
She taught law at VU for many, many years and retired there. And so we're gonna take advantage of that, so come rested when you come to these meetings. Well, if nobody has any comment, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We're done.
Oh, those meeting, okay. And I'll update
That's quite all right.
You
know what?
My undergrads.